Ready for some more advanced placement United States history fun? Good. Okay, so the last section we left off, we were talking about the purposeful Polk, and Polk really kind of had four goals of his presidency he was trying to accomplish. We talked about the lower tariff that he got in the Walker Tariff, the creation of an independent treasury, or getting rid of the national bank again, talking about settling the Oregon dispute, which he did when he settled on the 49th parallel. And then finally, this next section, misunderstandings with Mexico, then is really the point where he's, the fourth point of his presidency, or the fourth goal, which is to get California. He wants California, and he wants it bad, okay? One of the reasons he really is especially fond of California is San Francisco Bay. Okay, so San Francisco was a great harbor, and he saw it was really kind of the future gateway to the Pacific Ocean. So he wanted California as a whole, but also he really saw San Francisco as a key to trade with or an outlet to the Pacific Ocean. Gateway is a good word. All right, so let's talk about California for a second. Okay, so Americans, there are about 1,000, so not a whole lot of Americans actually in California at this time. There's definitely more of, there's 13,000 Spanish Mexicans. There were 75,000 Indians or natives. So really, we had 1,000 Americans. That's not really a lot to go off of, but we still really wanted California. Didn't matter to us. We want what we want, Okay, anyway, so Polk, taking a key from, the Louisiana Purchase, he's like, well, let's buy California. Let's buy California from Mexico. I should mention that California is owned by Mexico at this time. So he really wanted to buy California from Mexico, but there was just simply kind of too much baggage there with Mexico, too much baggage. First thing, Mexico owed is the word I was trying to say, about $3 million in damages to the United States, and it had defaulted in its payments. Not a good thing. Also, after we had annexed Texas, after Texas had become the 38th state, they more or less cut off all diplomatic relations with us. Their foreign minister in Washington, he went back to Mexico, so really we had no official diplomatic communication with them after we had accepted Texas, married Texas, you could say. And also kind of there was a dispute to where the southern border of Texas was. Originally, when Texas became a state, the original border was at the Nueces River. So the Nueces River was the original border, but once Texas became a state, they then claimed that no, actually the southern border is not the Nueces River, but the Rio Grande, which gave them about 150 extra miles of territory. So that was another dispute. Where's the southern border of Texas anyway? Is it up in the Nueces River, or is it down at the Rio Grande? We don't know. It's a dispute. So, regardless, Polk sends down a man by the name of John Slidell, and John Slidell goes to Mexico City in 1845 with the authorization of offering $25 million to purchase California and what is now New Mexico. So he's going to go down. John Slidell is going down on behalf of Polk to try to make a deal or a bargain to buy California, and it doesn't work. Mexico didn't even allow John Slidell to officially present the offer. They're like, we're not going to sell it to you. So that is really more or less a direct cause of the Spanish-American War. I said Spanish, it's Mexican-American War. So one of the direct causes is, frankly, because Mexico wouldn't sell California to us, and we're little spoiled brats, and we just want California, so we're going to get it one way or the other. That may have been an extension of Anyway, don't worry about that. So anyway, next section, American blood on American soil? There's a lot of question marks in this chapter. Okay, so now that, Mexico is saying no to selling us California, well, we decide, hey, we're going to have to fight for it. We're going to have to go to war for it. And we're like, we can do that. So Polk starts preparing for war. In January of 1846, he orders about 4,000 troops under the leadership of General Zachary Taylor. He's kind of important later on, just saying. So General Zachary Taylor and his 4,000 troops are sent past the Nueces River down to the Rio Grande River, and his thought was that this proximity would almost, cause a fight. We're kind of in now their territory, or what Mexico claims is their territory. So we send these 4,000 troops down past the Nueces River to the Rio Grande, where Polk's hope is that we would kind of spark a fight, because he doesn't want to start the war officially. He would much rather that Mexico attacks us. So he kind of puts them down there as bait. Anyway, so he waits. He waits about 4 months. He's like, why aren't they attacking us? Like, I just want my war already so I can get California. So he waits about 4 months and was even at the point of talking to his cabinet about, hey, should I just officially declare war regardless? And at that point, finally, 4 months later, he hears word that, yes, indeed, Zachary Taylor's troops had been fired upon. They had been attacked on April 24th, and 16 Americans had been killed. And this is obviously a sad thing, but this is exactly what Polk wanted. They were kind of bait. He wanted to spark this war so he could get California. So he went to Congress and he said, all our efforts to avoid through all of our efforts to avoid a clash, hostilities have been forced upon the country. Okay, sure, Polk, yeah. Anyway, so there's a lot of enthusiasm for this war. Even some anti-slavery Whigs kind of joined in the cry, Mexico or death. So we were behind this war. But not everyone was so enthusiastic about this development. There were some things presented called spot resolutions. And what they were is there were measures introduced by our friend Abraham Lincoln, who was at this time just a lonely congressman from Illinois. And Abraham Lincoln and a few others introduced these measures, kind of questioning Polk's motivations for war. Okay, they wanted Polk to clarify the exact spot, hence the term spot resolutions, the exact spot of land where the Mexican forces had attacked American troops. You can see kind of the purpose of that, because if he had to show the exact spot, he would probably have to show that technically their troops were already in Mexico. Okay, so this was not the big offensive act by Mexico. It's more a defensive act by Mexico. That makes sense, right? So these spot resolutions were put forth by Abraham Lincoln, trying to make Polk accountable for his words. Okay, kind of calling him out for provoking the war. Sure, okay. And yeah, more or less he was provoking a war. That's not really in question. As historians, we know that's exactly what he's doing. He's trying to provoke a war. But regardless, many Americans sincerely believed that Mexico was the aggressor in this war. So most of Americans still believed that Mexico was the aggressor, although we know now it wasn't. Mexico was really eager for war as well. Mexico was, upset that we stole their girlfriend, right? We stole Texas from them. And this was an opportunity to kind of get revenge, to put us in our place, okay? And also Mexico was thinking that, or hoping that America would be further weakened by a war with Britain. Because at this time we're still trying to figure out Oregon, still kind of, Oregon was in dispute with Britain, so Mexico was hoping, well, hey, I bet the United States is going to be in a war with Britain too, so we have some good chances here of winning. Okay, yes. Okay, next section. The mastering of Mexico. All right, so this is kind of talking about, the actual Mexican-American War, some battles, that sort of thing. So Polk wanted this Mexican-American War to be quick. He didn't want this to drag out. He just wanted to, take over, get California, and get out. He wanted this to be quick. An interesting side note of history here, Santa Anna, who was the dictator of Mexico for a long time, we saw him when Texas, kind of the war for Texas independence, that was earlier on. Remember, we captured him. Anyway, well, through other reasons, nothing to do with America, he had actually been exiled. He had been kicked out. This dictator, Santa Anna, had been kicked out to Cuba. So Santa Anna gets this letter to Polk saying that, hey, if you help me get back into Mexico, I will take over Mexico and I will sell you California at a reasonable price. Okay, I'll kind of betray my people if you let me back in the country. So, Polk's like, okay. Polk, how naive. He's a dictator. What were you thinking? Anyway, so Polk helps him to get back into Mexico. Santa Anna gains power again. However, Santa Anna does not sell us California. Santa Anna definitely just kind of rallies behind the Mexican troops. He broke his promise. Anyway, where am I? Okay, so yes. Yes, yeah, okay. All right, okay, so let's talk about some of the major operations of battles, or if that makes sense, operations. Not taking out anyone's kidneys, but like battles. Okay, so anyway, 1846, we get Stephen Kearny, and he has 1,700 men, and they take Santa Fe. Another one, we have Captain John C. Fremont, and he collaborates with the Navy and kind of local Americans living in the area of San Francisco, and he wins the area of San Francisco. Kind of a side note here is that there were some not Native Americans, but Americans who were living in California who had kind of established a California republic. Can you remember how Texas had kind of formed its own republic? Well, some folks in California, some Americans, had formed their own sort of California republic. They called it the California Bear Flag Republic, indeed. But as soon as news of the Mexican-American War came about, they abandoned the republic and jumped on board with Americans. So, so John C. Fremont, with the help of the American Navy and kind of these local American Californianites, kind of group together and overtake the San Francisco Bay Area. Another guy, okay, we already talked about him a little bit, but General Zachary Taylor. He's called the Old Rough and Ready, kind of fought his way into Mexico, and although he was outnumbered 5,000 to 20,000, he won the Battle of Buena Vista against Santa Anna's troops, and that really propels him forth in the national stage as a war hero. So we'll see Zachary Taylor later on as well. So, Zachary Taylor, the hero of Buena Vista, against all odds, beating Santa Anna's troops. Okay, and kind of the last thing to talk about here is Winfield Scott. General Winfield Scott, we'll see him a little bit in the Civil War, at least I'm assuming. He's kind of a big deal. Anyway, so he goes after the heart of Mexico. He goes after Mexico City itself, and although he had fewer troops than he would have had liked, a lot of his troops had died of disease, that sort of things, he was able to capture Mexico City in September of 1847. So Winfield Scott really kind of seals the deal, so to speak, with this Mexican-American War by capturing Mexico City. Okay, next section, fighting Mexico for peace. That's an oxymoron, fighting for peace. Anyway, okay, so So, okay, so we captured Mexico City, more or less the war is over, but we actually have to make a peace, we have to sign a treaty, that sort of thing. This is how the world works. So Polk sends down the chief clerk kind of like secretary, more or less, of the State Department, and this chief clerk of the State Department, his name is Nicholas P. Trist. Okay, so Trist first gives Santa Anna a $10,000 bribe to sign an armistice. Okay, because remember, an armistice just means we're going to stop fighting. It's not an official treaty necessarily. So he bribes. First thing he does, Trist goes down, bribes Santa Anna with $10,000 to sign this armistice to stop the fighting. And then he makes a treaty with, like the official treaty, called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Okay, and this Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, it got Texas, California, and the land in between to the United States. So the United States did get friend California. It got Texas, although we kind of already had Texas, at least in Mexico's mind. Now they're officially giving up Texas. So we get Texas, California, and all the land in between. And in exchange, we promise to pay Mexico $18.25 million. And this is a huge deal, okay? We actually gain over half of all of Mexico. That's a big deal. So over half of all of Mexico we get through this treaty. And it was kind of strange that since we were winning the war, like since we had won the war, that we would be paying them money as a part of the deal. That's typically not something that happens. But Polk was really eager to get this just taken care of. He was afraid that if he let this linger, that the Mexican government would fall apart and there would be no one to make a treaty with. He was also fearful that the anti-slavery movement in the United States might prevent the treaty from being approved. So he really just says, kind of sweeten the deal, wanting to close this deal, seal it, that he's willing to actually pay Mexico money for the acquisition of the land. Okay, so we have the treaty, and if it helps you, there's on page 409. There's a map of the actual territory we gained that could be helpful if you want to look at page 409. So anyway, so now that we have a treaty, it has to be approved. So it has to be approved by the Senate. And there are kind of two groups that were opposing the treaty for radically different reasons. Okay, the first group was the conscious Whigs. Okay, and these were Northern Whigs who opposed slavery on a moral ground. Because remember, if we had gained although we already had Texas, all this new territory, they were afraid that this would be just a more territory for slavery. They thought this would be a huge expansion of slavery. So there's some kind of Northern Whigs who really opposed this treaty because they opposed the spreading of slavery. On the flip side, you could say, there's a group that opposed the treaty because they didn't think the treaty went far enough. Okay, we did get half of Mexico's land, but they wanted it all. They wanted us to keep fighting. They wanted us to actually take over the whole of Mexico. That would have been a hot mess. Could you imagine that? Hot mess. So many issues there. We don't want to talk about it. But so although there were those kind of flip viewpoints, although there were two kind of groups opposing this treaty, the treaty was approved. It was signed off of. It passed the Senate 38-14. Wonderful. Okay, last section is kind of like a summary. Okay, the pluses and the minuses of the Mexican War, or I should say the profit and loss in Mexico. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? Let's discuss. Okay, so some pluses. Okay, so we gained about the United States increased like a third. So we gained a third more territory, and this was the biggest kind of land grab we've ever had. It was even bigger than the Louisiana Purchase. Big deal. So we increased to about a third in size geographically. Like I said, bigger than Louisiana Purchase. The spirit of manifest destiny, which this whole chapter is talking about, going from sea to shining sea, is really increased in America. And And this war was really kind of a school, you could say, for a lot of the generals that we'll see in the Civil War. So this is almost like a training ground, the practice court, if you will, for a lot of generals we'll see in the Civil War, like Robert E. Lee, Grant, that sort of thing. Through this war, our Army, Navy, and Marine Corps are strengthened, and we also kind of show to the rest of the world what we're capable of, really kind of showing off a bit. Some downsides, it cost about 13,000 American lives, mostly due to disease. It created a really bitter feeling in Mexico and really in the rest of Latin America. Before, America was kind of seen almost like a friend, like friendly America. But now we're really seen as kind of like a bully. Okay, they're like, well, are you going to go after me next? You just pretty much took half of Mexico because you wanted to. Are you going to come after my country next? So it really kind of changed the diplomatic relationships with the Latin American countries and Mexico, of course. And then kind of the biggest consequence domestically, meaning within the United States itself, was really that it brought forth, like on a golden platter, the issue of slavery. Let's keep talking about slavery, why not? So it brought the issue of slavery to the forefront again. The abolitionists, or the anti-slavery folks, accused the South of provoking this war in order to expand slavery. Of course, a lot of the volunteers who volunteered to fight in this war were from the South, so maybe that was a little bit true. And then kind of a point of example of this issue coming to the forefront is something called the Wilmot Proviso. Okay, so a proviso, just so you know, it's kind of a rider that's on a bill or attachment to a bill. So this was actually, the proviso was a rider that was attached to the bill that funded the end of the war. Not that that's super important, but if you're just wondering what a proviso is, wonder no more. Okay, so anyway, it was not actually passed, so this did not become law at all, but it highlighted the fact, kind of showing the tension that was building between the North and the South at this time. Because what the Wilmot Proviso was, it said that it wanted to prohibit slavery in all the land that we gained during the Mexican-American War. So that would include Texas, California, kind of like the New Mexico area. So it had this bill, proviso passed. It would have said no more slavery or no expansion of slavery into the new region. Okay? It passed the House twice, but it was shot down in the Senate both times. So it never became law. But like I said, it really kind of showed the tension that was building between the North and the South over the issue of slavery at this time. So you could almost say, like, who's going to prevent you? There's not like history police. Although another great show, Lumberjack Wars, History Police, just saying. Anyway, so you could say, let's get back on track here, that the Mexican War was almost a cause of the Civil War, because it really brought this huge gain of land, really brought the issue or the slavery dispute to the foreground. All right, and that is all for chapter 17.